How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Infinite Sports. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder. Week 15 in the NFL is upon us. Got kicked off last night with the Buccaneers and the Falcons, so we're going to talk about that game, and then I will give you my picks for this week. So let's get into the Thursday night game last night first. So this is a big game for the Buccaneers. They've been struggling over the last 5 or 6 weeks, with the injuries, with the quarterback position, Baker Mayfield being banged up, dealing with the shoulder injury on his non-throwing side, and the Bucs have kind of suffered because of that. Losing to New England, they lost to the Saints last week, so this was a big game for them, and they were getting some reinforcements back last night with Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan, and Mike Evans made his presence felt. Jalen McMillan was just short of a touchdown, caught a 20-yard reception down to the one. It was originally ruled a touchdown, but they went and reviewed it, and he was down short of the goal line. So then the Bucs later ran it in with Sean Tucker on that drive. But the Bucs were in control of this game. They were up 2 scores in the fourth quarter, under 10 minutes left. Thought the Bucs were going to win this game, but the Falcons, they were able to come back. They score a touchdown after Baker Mayfield throws a pick. And then they go for 2, they don't get it. And then they score a touchdown later in the fourth quarter. And then they get the ball back with not much time left. They're able to get down the field in field goal range. And Zane Gonzalez, who I went back and looked, he was the kicker for the Commanders last year in the playoffs and kicked the game-winning field goal against the Bucs to knock them out of the playoffs. Same thing last night. Well, not the playoffs, obviously, but Zane Gonzalez kicks the game-winning field goal for the Falcons and gives them a 29-28 victory. And the Falcons, so many penalties last night. It was ridiculous. It was a flag fest last night. I couldn't believe it. And I was saying while watching the game, the Falcons lose this game. It wouldn't have surprised me if Raheem Morris would have lost his job right after this game. Now, still likely that that's going to happen. I mean, unless the Falcons, play well down the stretch and, they finish 8-9, maybe that gives him a better chance. But I think he's going to be gone regardless. But the Falcons last night, 19 penalties to the Bucs 4. I mean, it was just every penalty you could think of. And also there were some questionable calls last night. Kyle Pitts, who had an unbelievable game, his third touchdown, that's right, he had 3 touchdowns last night. His third touchdown, his backside lands inbounds, but his elbow hits out of bounds. So they had to review it to see if the call was going to stand, that it was going to be a touchdown, because it was ruled a touchdown. And on one angle, you see the elbow, it looks like it goes down before his backside, and then in another angle, it shows his backside going down first. So it just, I mean, they upheld it. But looking at that, I didn't think that was a touchdown, but it ended up being ruled a touchdown. And then also, I think this was on the same drive too. So Cousins completes a pass to Mooney. Mooney ends up fumbling the football. There are 5 Buccaneers around the football. And I thought the Bucs clearly recovered it. But they left it with Atlanta. And this was before the 2-minute warning. So I was thinking, why could they have challenged it? Because I feel like the Bucs, how did the Bucs not recover that? So that was another head scratcher for me, was that Atlanta was able to recover the fumble on that. And that led to the Pitts touchdown. But yeah, the Bucs defense, both defenses struggled last night. I mean, Atlanta was able to get after Baker Mayfield and, get to him. How many sacks did they end up getting last night? They finished with, they had, what'd they have? 5 sacks last night? Actually, no. Yeah, 5 sacks of Baker Mayfield last night. And the Bucs only got to Kirk Cousins once. And it was late in the fourth quarter when you thought that was going to be the end of it. And then Cousins hits David Sills for a big gain on 4th and 14. that sets up the field goal. Cousins had a good game. I mean, he's played very well against Tampa since coming over to the NFC South. I mean, last year the Thursday night crew was all over it because they played each other on a Thursday night last year, and Kirk Cousins had 500 yards passing against them and an overtime win. And here, he had 373 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But Kyle Pitts was the big story last night. 11 receptions, 166 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, this was a career day for him. And he talked about loving the state of Florida because obviously that's where he went to school. When he was interviewed after the game, joining the Thursday night crew on the post-game show. And they needed him because, with Drake London out and Darnell Mooney really wasn't impactful in this game, had a few receptions. There's no Drake London. Bijan Robinson was the second leading scorer. I mean, they needed Pitts to step up, and he did that. And he's kind of been Kirk Cousins' main target since Cousins has stepped back into the starting role, and Drake London being out. But yeah, the Bucs and it's not like some of the receptions were underneath and Cousins is checking down to him, but there were times where there was just blown coverages, and they left Pitts wide open. There was one pass to him down the right side where he didn't even see the ball at first. Then he's like, "Oh, here's the ball right here." Makes the catch. He's behind the defense and went for a long gain. Bucs were able to tackle him down, but he was very impactful last night. And like I said, the Falcons got after Baker Mayfield, 5 sacks. And Baker still doesn't look 100%. I mean, the numbers were a little bit better last night. He did have a pick in this game that did lead to one of the touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Was trying to hit Mike Evans, but got picked off. And now the Bucs are 7-7. And Mike Evans, like I said, made his return last night. Was targeted 12 times, 6 receptions, 132 yards. Had a 45-yard reception late that I thought was. You thought at that point the Bucs were definitely winning the game. I think the Bucs were down at that point, but it looked like all the momentum was going to the Buccaneers when Evans made that play. And there were a couple of times where Evans got banged up, and you thought, "Oh, here we go again." And he's a big dude, and there was a time he jumped in the air to catch a pass, and the defensive back of the Falcons came and hit him in the leg, and he flipped over. And then there was another time he made a catch on third down, and he's getting hit as he's going to the ground. You can't lose this guy, And it was nice to see their whole array of weapons together for the first time. I mean, there was no Cade Otton last night, but their receivers, you had everybody last night. You had Godwin, who had a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. Abuka made some plays last night. Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan. It was nice to see them all together. And then you got all 3 running backs, Bucky Irving, Rashad White, and Sean Tucker, who had a touchdown. And you also had Devin Culp last night scoring a touchdown, a 6-yard touchdown from Baker Mayfield. But yeah, this was a tough loss. And also, the play calling at the end, I understood why the Bucs were throwing it, but you got to let the clock wind because your defense is just... Defense is not the 2020 Buccaneers defense, that's for sure. They were letting Cousins sit back there, and Bijan Robinson, of course, was making plays, showing you why he's one of the best running backs in the NFL, both as a runner and as a receiver. So elusive. Different kind of runner compared to Jameer. I mean, Jameer Gibbs is a speedster, but Bijan and Gibbs, 2 of the best running backs in the NFL. But Bijan, shows you why. He's one of the best too last night. But yeah, this Bucs defense, like I said, nowhere near the 2020 defense. I mean, you got a couple guys from that defense still on the team, but they can't generate a pass rush, letting guys run free. I mean, they gave up 476 total yards to the Falcons. And the Falcons are a team that have been struggling. Kirk Cousins and that offense, they really struggled against Seattle's defense last week, but Seattle's defense is one of the best. And like I said, the Bucs, offensively, the numbers were better. But, Baker said after the game, you could blame the defense, but he said he has to play better. And he's got to make plays. He threw a pick that set up a touchdown drive for the Falcons. and you picked up a first down. You needed 2 first downs to ice the game at the end. You did pick up one of them, but you didn't get the second one. I thought after they picked up the first down with Godwin late that was going to be it. But then they didn't run the football, and I thought it was working a little bit with Bucky Irving at certain points, but they tried to ice it by throwing, and it just did not work. Did not work, and this offense still is not clicking. So, look, they lost this game because of, the turnover late and, poor clock management. The defense didn't play well last night, and now they've lost to back-to-back divisional opponents. And they got the Panthers up next week, who are licking their chops because now they control their own destiny. They have taken over first place in this division. And they've kind of had a weird year, losing to bad teams, but beating some of the best teams in the NFL. Really, the Rams, knocking them off. So it's going to be a fight to the finish. So the Bucs, they got this mini bye. So they got to take advantage of it. They got to look themselves in the mirror, take a long look and say, what are we right now? Because right now they're not playing like a good football team. They're not. And Todd Bowles, if you saw his press conference afterwards, he was still, wasn't like yelling and screaming, but he was using a lot of expletives in his press conference. So he was ticked off. The whole team is ticked off. Mike Evans left the field before the clock expired. And he was ticked off with what happened. You had a 3rd and 28. You get half of it back with Pitts. And then you leave David Sills, who dropped basically a walk-in touchdown earlier in the game, but they leave him wide open on a 4th and 14. So yeah, Bucs lose. They are now 7-7. Not looking good. Not looking good for the Bucs. But if they could beat Carolina next week, then for the moment everything is right in the world. They got the Panthers twice, and they have the Dolphins, I believe, in between that. And then for the Panthers, they have the Bucs twice, and then, they got the Saints coming up this week. So I would like to think they are going to win this game. And the Saints beat them at home earlier in the season. But yeah, they got the Saints coming up. They got the Bucs twice, and then in between that, I believe they have Seattle. Yes, they do have Seattle. So that's a tough game right there. So it's still anybody's division between these two teams. But right now, we don't know what the Panthers are. Another team. The Panthers are very inconsistent. You don't know what you're going to get each week. But I think you're going to get their best when they're playing Tampa next week. Because they want this. Tampa obviously wants it too, but Panthers are going to be motivated next week. And the Panthers, they came up short last year in Carolina against the Bucs. That game they could have won if it wasn't for a Chuba Hubbard fumble in overtime, I believe. They should have won that game. So it's going to be interesting. And Bryce Young's played some good football this year at times. The Bucs have some issues on the offensive line. That was highlighted after the game. Obviously watching the game, but also, Andrew Whitworth pointed it out last night. Some of the guys that they're missing on the interior of the offensive line. And that's a problem. It's been a problem for a while. That's kind of led to Baker Mayfield being banged up. And I think if the Bucs end up missing the playoffs, Todd Bowles, I think, is probably out. Because where this team was at the beginning of the year to now injuries have played a role in it, there's no doubt about it. But you lost to a team that was 4-9 last night, and then you lost to the Saints the week before that I believe had 2 wins. You gave them their 3rd win of the season. And you're a defensive guy. And with all that offensive talent, you should be able to win this division. And they still can. But if you miss out on the playoffs, I think he should end up being let go. And the Bucs got to find a new head coach. because that was not good. That was not good last night. So yeah, Bucs end up losing 29-28. Now dropped to 7-7. I think they've now lost 5 of their last 6. And I feel like this has happened to them multiple times in the Baker Mayfield era, where they've gotten off to these good starts, then they hit that little lull period, and then they finish the season strong. Yeah, they've lost 5 of their last 6. And the only game they won was against the Cardinals, and they only won by 3 points. And those games were there for the taking, the Saints game and this game last night. Could have won both of those games. The Patriots game, you had a chance to win that. The Bills game was back and forth until the end. But, your defense gives up 44 points to Josh Allen, And then the Rams game, I knew from the even before the kickoff, I knew they had no chance in this game, in that game. And then Baker gets hurt. So, yeah, look, it's still there for the taking, but right now, it's not looking good. It's not looking good for the Bucs. But I did take the Falcons with the points last night. So I did lose straight up, but I did pick the Falcons. Because, again, I really didn't trust the Bucs defense. And, the Falcons, I know they haven't been great either. But Kirk Cousins has played well against them. And also the Bucs offense has kind of been struggling too in recent weeks. So, it did look good. It didn't look good when they were down by 14, but they came back and they won. So give them credit. And, good. I'll say this too. Good for Kirk Cousins last night as well, having a good game. I don't know what his future holds in Atlanta, but I definitely think in the right situation, he could still be good and he could still win you games. And he proved that last night. Like maybe a reunion with the Vikings, maybe. Or maybe he goes to the Colts next year. Or maybe he goes to the Steelers. He's definitely going to have options. Now, obviously, he's going to want to continue to play, too. That's also the other thing. So, yeah, Falcons improved to 5-9. Bucs dropped to 7-7. All right, so let's get to the rest of these games. Start off with the Giants and the Commanders. So, this game's like a flip a coin. I really don't know who to take. The Commanders, 3-10. Jaden Daniels is out. He never should have even played last week, but they threw him out there. The Commanders, complete 180 from last year. Giants, they another rough season for them. Right now, they are in sole possession of the number 1 overall pick in this upcoming NFL draft. I don't know if that's going to stay that way because you got the Commanders, you got the Raiders coming up on the schedule. So, Giants could win at least 2 more games. I think I'm going to take the Giants here in this spot. I don't feel good about it, but like I said, this game is a flip of a coin. They're 2.5-point favorites. I think I'm going to lean the Giants here to get the win. Marcus Mariota will be the starter for the Commanders. I think he's been okay for them as taking over for Jaden Daniels while he's been injured. So I do think it's going to be a close game. I'll take the Giants here, though. They win an ugly, close game, and they snap their long losing streak. Because the last time they won a game was October 9th. It was Thursday night against the Eagles. And you thought, Giants are going to win some football games. It seems. Now, that did not happen. That did not happen. I mean, everything got derailed really after the Broncos game. Because that was a game they should have won. But coulda, shoulda, woulda when it comes to the Giants. So then you got the Browns and the Bears. Bears 7.5-point favorites. Coming off of a tough loss to the Packers, they dropped from the 1 seed to the 7 seed. Shedeur Sanders, hey, looked pretty good last week. I know it was against the Tennessee Titans, but you had to like what you saw out of him in that game. It's tough. This game's another one that's tough. I think I'm going to take the points. It's going to be very cold. So the running games are going to play a huge factor in this game. I don't know what happened to the Browns' defense last week against the Titans. I mean, they let the Titans run all over them. And the Bears got 2 solid running backs themselves in Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift. So that's going to play a role. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close. I'm going to take the Bears to win, but the Browns, they cover the number here. I think it's a big number. All right, we got the Ravens and the Bengals, a rematch from Thanksgiving from a couple weeks ago. And to talk about Joe Burrow briefly, because I know his press conference has kind of been trending. And, what he said in his press conference, Jamar Chase thought it was AI with what Burrow said, that he's been dealing with some stuff, both football related and both, on and off the field, basically. And, said if he's not having fun playing the game, then what's the point of doing this? So now everybody's comparing him to Andrew Luck, and I've definitely said that in the past, that he's heading towards that route because he's been beaten up so much since he's gotten into the league. He's taken way too many hits. He has suffered a ton of injuries, and this could lead to his career not lasting that long. And look, it's on the organization, but it's also the fact that, he wanted Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both back and both signed. And I get that because they are a great trio. But, and the Cowboys are dealing with the same thing too, even though the defense is definitely better than what it was earlier in the year because of the trades that they made. But you can't have all of your payroll dedicated to 3 players, or most of your payroll. And not only is the defense poor, but you lose, one of your top draft choices, who took a while to sign, in Stewart. And then also, Trey Hendrickson, he hasn't really played. He's going to be out. The defense really needed to be addressed more so. You needed to correct that defense. And the defense is still bad. The offensive line still isn't that great. I always kept saying T. Higgins should have been the odd man out. And they should have found another receiver to replace him to go along with Jamar Chase. But they didn't do that. So I know it kind of comes off as me saying it's also partly Burrow's fault. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation. But this is where the Bengals are right now. They're 4-9. They're not going anywhere. And, the quarterback hasn't been able to stay healthy. So, and then you got Lamar Jackson, who's not healthy on the other side. The Ravens are in a tailspin. Defense is not playing great. Joe Burrow was rusty in the beginning on Thanksgiving, but put together a good game. And then Aaron Rodgers was good for the most part. Put together his best game of the season, arguably, with the Steelers. The Ravens, it's not looking good for them right now. The quarterback's not healthy. This is a game, I'm going to say it again, you got to lean on Derrick Henry. Let Derrick Henry do his thing. Because your quarterback is not 100%. Your quarterback is not playing well. He's turning the ball over. Lean on your running game. And the Bengals, speaking of T. Higgins, he's going to be out. So that's one less problem they're going to have to deal with. Actually, I don't even think they had to deal with him on Thanksgiving. Yeah, he didn't even play on Thanksgiving. So, the Bengals, look, they're still not out of it. They still have a kind of a chance to get back and somehow win the division. It's not happening. So they're just playing for pride at this point. The Ravens, to me, are due for a win. They are due for a win. So I think they win here. Bengals are 2.5-point underdogs at home, but I'm going to take the Ravens here. Get back on track, get a win here. They need it. So then we got the Cardinals and the Texans. Texans 9.5-point favorites. They're playing really well. 8-5 on the season now. Cardinals are 3-10. No Marvin Harrison Jr. once again. It's a big number. Cardinals are going to be missing pieces on the offensive line too. And Jacoby Brissett, look, I think he's done the best he can in this spot. Michael Wilson's been a nice bright spot for them, but yeah, against the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL, it's going to be tough. I think the Texans, separate themselves, put some distance between them and the Cardinals in this game. Maybe you get some garbage time points from Michael Wilson and Jacoby Brissett, but and not to say the Texans' offense has been that great either, but Texans are the better team here. They got the better defense, and I think the offense will do enough where they win and cover the number. So I'm going to take the Texans. Then you got the Jets, who are going to be starting the youngster at QB. No Justin Fields, no Tyrod Taylor. In Jacksonville, the line's jumped up to 13.5. Yeah, it's going to be tough sledding for the Jets in this game. I think Jacksonville, I think they win like 31-13, something like that. I think this is going to be an easy game for them. So I like the Jags here in this spot. And that'll get them to 10-4. It looks like they're on their way to the playoffs. Then you got the Chiefs and the Chargers. A win by the Chargers here basically eliminates the Chiefs from the playoffs entirely. The Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites in this contest. Look, Chargers are dealing with issues on the offensive line, same as the Chiefs. I think this is going to be a close game. It's always a close game between these two. I think the Chargers cover. Chiefs are another team that's due for a win. I think the Chiefs win a close game here. Although I said that last week. But I think the Chargers cover. I think this could be like a field goal game, something like that. So I'll take the Chargers to cover, but the Chiefs to win. This is a big game in the AFC East. Bills and Patriots. In New England. Right now the Patriots are 1.5-point underdogs. It's tough. New England's coming off a bye. I don't trust the Bills' defense. I do trust that Josh Allen will play well. I'm going to take Josh Allen and the Bills to get revenge on the Patriots, get a win here. Close game. Both quarterbacks play well. But Josh Allen puts together a good drive at the end of the game, and the Bills win. And at least make the Patriots sweat a little bit, because they'll still be one game back. And then we got some good 4 o'clock games later. Broncos and Packers. 2 very good defenses. Broncos are 2.5-point underdogs. Packers, big win over the Bears. Broncos 11-2. They're on their way to clinching the AFC West. This could be a very low-scoring game. Like right now, the over/under is 42.5. I might take the under if I was a betting man, because these offenses are very frustrating to watch. More so the Broncos. The Packers, their offense has definitely struggled against good defenses. We've seen that this year. I mean, go back and look at the 10-7 game against the Eagles. And that same week, the Broncos played the Raiders. They won 10-7. Well, the Packers lost, the Broncos won. I'm going to take the Broncos, though. I'm going to take the Broncos here, being at home. I'll take the points. I think they win a close, low-scoring game here. It's going to be a defensive battle. And then speaking of the Raiders and the Eagles, they're playing each other this week. Kenny Pickett's getting the start for the Raiders. They're 12.5-point underdogs. I think the Eagles will win this game. Okay? They'll win this game. But that number is too big for me. It will not surprise me if the Eagles go out there and they completely blow out the Raiders. But Jalen Hurts is not playing well. Maybe he turns the ball over. And I think Kenny Pickett could give you something better than Geno Smith. I think he'll give you a better outing than Geno Smith. And, hey, Kenny Pickett revenge game. The Eagles, they traded him after helping them win the Super Bowl. Because Kenny Pickett played in the Super Bowl. Don't forget about that. So maybe Kenny Pickett's got a chip on his shoulder. And this is a good spot for Kenny Pickett, too, because he can also give teams that might need a bridge quarterback next year, saying, hey, I can start and win games for you. So, but, yeah, I don't like it. I'm going to take the points. I think the Eagles will win, but I'll take the points. And then we got the Lions and the Rams. these two teams play each other almost every year now, and it's always fun when these two teams play against each other. I was going back and forth. The line jumped up to 6. The Rams are favored by 6. And, I do worry about the offensive line for Detroit against this Rams front. But like I said, these games are always close. So, if Jared Goff has time in the pocket, I think that Rams secondary is a little vulnerable. And they're going up against Jameson Williams, and you're going to have Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, another week removed from his injury, and he looked good last week. I think the Lions will hang around, but I think this is a game where the Rams finally beat the Lions. I know they did beat the Lions the year they won the Super Bowl, but the last two outings, including the playoffs and the opener last year, the Rams lost. Rams, I think, win here. So I like the Rams to win a close game here. Should be a fun game. Panthers and Saints. Listen, the Saints beat them in Carolina earlier this season. I think the Panthers, they flipped the script here. Hey, give Tyler Shuck credit. Played a good game last week against the Bucs. Panthers, though, coming off the bye, I think they get even. They get the win here. And they cover that 2.5. 49ers and Titans. So I've been very bad with the Titans recently. Haven't been able to... I know they're not a good football team, but for some reason when it comes to the spreads, I can't get it right. I take them... Well, the last 4 weeks, I don't take them. I take the Texans. They cover against the Texans. They cover against the Seahawks. They put up 24 points against the Seahawks defense. Then I'm like, all right, divisional game against the Jags, let me take them. They got a big number. Jags end up covering. Then I take the Browns because the Browns have one of the best defenses in the league, and the Titans run all over them. So this is the week I'm taking the Niners against them. Niners coming off of a bye. They're locked into a playoff spot, but they slip up. They could be on the outside looking in. I like the Niners to win and cover in this spot. Get the win. I think the offense does its thing. Purdy, throws 2 or 3 touchdown passes. George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, those guys. Offense has a good game here. Titans won't be able to keep up. So I like the Niners in that spot. Then we got a game that I really want to be able to watch, where I am, I really can't. I'm going to have to rely on Red Zone. The Colts and the Seahawks. So it looks like it's going to be Phillip Rivers to start. And the Colts are 13.5-point underdogs. And listen, Phillip Rivers, I think, I don't want to say he's going to go out there and embarrass himself. It's just such a tough spot to be in. Guy hasn't played in 5 years almost. He's 44 years old, and he's going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL on the road. That is a lot to ask for. Now, he knows the offense. I like the supporting cast around him. I think he's going to be able to sling it. But is he going to be able to have time? Is he going to be able to... the receivers... I think the receivers are going to get open. And you got Jonathan Taylor coming out of the backfield. But it's just... I want to see him go out there and play well. I mean, if the Colts go into Seattle with Phillip Rivers and they somehow pull off a win, this team is the team of destiny. Then, because that would be quite something. But I just don't see it. And it is a big number. Now, had this have been the Indianapolis Colts with Phillip Rivers from, when he was last playing in the NFL, oh yeah, I would take the points. But Phillip Rivers right now, to me, it's just the name. It's name value. That's it. He hasn't played, and that doesn't. And I'm not trying to say he's not a good quarterback and all that. It's just where we are right now. It's 2025. Okay. I don't know. I can't do it. So I'm going to take the Seahawks to win and cover. Yeah. And then the Sunday night game, you got the Vikings and the Cowboys. Vikings getting 5.5 points, coming off of a 31-0 win over the Commanders. Cowboys lost last Thursday against the Lions. Look, I know J.J. McCarthy looked better. I still don't think he's very good. I think he'll continue to struggle. The Cowboys, look, they're going up against a tough defense, against a Brian Flores defense. You got to respect that. So could this game be close? Yes, but I just think J.J. McCarthy is going to continue to struggle. And because of that, I'm going to side with the Cowboys, take them to win and cover. And then we got the Steelers and the Dolphins on Monday night. Steelers are 3-point favorites. This one is tough for me because interesting development. T.J. Watt had a collapsed lung. Okay, so he got, surgery. He was in the hospital. He's all good now. Going to make a full recovery. Because and the cause of that was he was receiving treatment. This was kind of like a Tyrod Taylor situation. When during the COVID season, he was receiving treatment, they hit his lung, and then that led to the birth of Justin Herbert's NFL career, getting an opportunity to start in week 2 of the COVID season. So the Steelers are going to be without their best player on defense. Dolphins have been playing better as of late. The Steelers picked up a win against the Ravens. They're in sole possession of first place in the North. Aaron Rodgers looked better. Let's see how it looks this week. The Dolphins don't play well in cold weather. We know that. So I'm going to side with the Steelers. But it would not shock me because it wouldn't have shocked. Look, I took the Steelers with the points last week. That ended up paying off. I didn't think they were going to win. But it didn't surprise me that they won because that's what they do. It would not surprise me if the Steelers end up laying an egg and end up losing this game. I think they're going to win. I think they'll win. Tua will throw some interceptions. Will the Steelers capitalize on them? Again, the offense did some good things. Hit DK Metcalf. Get some of these veteran receivers involved. Get Pat Freiermuth more involved too, because he's kind of been a non-factor in this offense. Pound the rock with, Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. I think the Steelers win. I think they cover the number. They get after Tua. Tua turns the ball over. And the Steelers maybe improve to 8-6. So those are my picks. So we're taking the Giants. We're taking the Broncos. We're taking the Bears. But we're taking the Browns to cover the spread. Ravens to bounce back. Texans, Jags, Chargers, Bills, Raiders, Lions, Panthers, 49ers, Seahawks, Cowboys, and the Steelers. Those are my Week 15 NFL picks. Let me know what you guys think about those picks. And as always, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video, to the channel. Make sure to follow us on the social media platforms in the description below. And wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen to us as well. Just look up Infinite Sports, and you can listen to us as well. Only got 4 weeks left in the regular season of the NFL, so buckle up. We're in for an exciting finish. So as always, everybody, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off. Have a good weekend, and I will talk to you guys next week. Take care.